Hey, everybody. Welcome to Invest, Buy, and Sell with Jael. Today, I am thrilled to introduce a rising star in the world of finance and real estate. At just 20 years old, she founded her first investment fund and raised an impressive $15 million, making the start of her journey to uncover Wall Street secrets to wealth and outsized returns. With a passion for building extraordinary relationships and a laser focus on capital acquisition, business buying, and real estate investing, she has already made a significant mark in the industry. Since 2002, she's completed over 200 real estate transactions and is widely regarded as an expert real estate lender based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Her unique insights and strategies have helped her acquire capital to build a robust real estate and business buying portfolio. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Alexis Morgan to the stage.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you, Jael. I appreciate that.
You're awesome. That's why.
It's been a long time since I heard everything listed out like that. That's pretty cool.
Yes, it's really cool. Can you start by telling us where you're streaming in from today?
Yeah, today I'm actually not at my home base. Usually I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, like you mentioned. I go to a lot of real estate events. As we go through the podcast, you'll hear like that's been a big part of my story, going to events, meeting people. And so I still do that with everything that's happened. I still go out and try to meet people and learn from people. There's always things that you can learn. And so today I'm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for an event that's happening, this evening all throughout the weekend called Clever Summit.
Wow. So glad to hear that you're at Clever Summit, always networking, which is a huge part of your success. And how do you balance that, Alexis, networking as well as running all your businesses?
Yeah, I think based on what I've seen, I've networked with probably thousands of people at this point. People have to find the balance between doing and learning. A lot of people just learn. They are wealth of knowledge, but they never have done the thing. And without doing the thing, you really can't get the experience and credibility you need. And then a lot of people will just do, keep their head down, and they never turn back to say, okay, am I doing something wrong? Could I be doing this better? They never take the time to learn. So I try to keep it at like a 60-40 scale, 60% like in my business, working hard. But I think it's part of my job as the business owner, as the founder, is to always be the one going out and progressing the vision of the company. So I allocate a lot of my time and my extra energy, my weekends, to learning and going out to events, hosting events, stuff like that.
I think that's super important, Alexis, because a lot of people, once you have this level of success that you have, stop learning. Yeah. And you're here telling us that you're learning every single weekend and still making time to do that. And I think that's really important to note.
100%.
Great balance that you have there. So just to break the ice, because everybody heard your high level accolades, tell us something fun about yourself that we may not know.
Yeah, I mean, one cool thing that everyone seems to love is that I'm 20 years old. That's like a very rare thing. I mean, I dropped out of college, so I don't have anything that anyone else, wouldn't have. I really built this from the ground up. And so I think that makes me a little bit more relatable than, the average, character that we see coming up and talking about finance, coming up and talking about investing. So those things have helped me to connect with people. I'm young. I built this from the ground up. I didn't have a ton of formal education. And in the last 2 years, like you mentioned, I've done hundreds of real estate transactions very quickly. So the knowledge came together fast.
Yes. And I think that's what makes you so relatable and authentic. I'm also a college dropout, but I waited way longer to drop out. I wish I did it sooner, honestly, because being an entrepreneur has been so rewarding. So, Alexis, I think that the biggest part of how you've done it so quickly is your mindset. Would you agree with that?
Oh, without a doubt. That was the first thing that had to be worked on. And I've spent just like I've spent money going to meet someone who's making double what I'm making, triple what I'm making, 4 times what I'm making. I've spent the money on who can help me get the belief systems. What is the mindset of a successful person? How can I adapt that? I've spent money, I've spent time, I've spent energy investing into the most important square footage in my life, which is the two things the thing between your 2 ears is your brain. You need to invest in your mindset and the knowledge that is held within there.
Yes. That is huge. Mindset is actually the key to everything that we're doing. And before even spending all this money on different mentorships and education, we got to work on this. So I love that. You've made a huge investment in what you're putting into your body, your mind, and also physically. I was like, wow, Alexis also is big on health and wellness, and that has a lot to do with your discipline and mindset.
Yeah, I think, even like coming around to spending money on a mentorship, that takes a certain person with a certain mindset to say, okay, I'm going to invest in myself. I was talking to someone the other day, and I was telling them how I'm going to go to Clever Summit this weekend, and they're like, oh, well, how much did you pay for the ticket? And I was like, it is a great question, but it's low key irrelevant. Because imagine the ideas that will come out of this. Imagine the people that will come out of this. What I have today, the business that I had today, is the result of me spending $2,500 2 years ago investing in a weekend event, because I met the person that's now my business partner, that now connected me to this person. Like, you have to have a certain mindset, and to develop that, sometimes it takes, putting yourself out there, being uncomfortable, and really putting the magnifying glass on what are the thought patterns that I have. Do the thought patterns that I have serve me? And those are hard questions that I think a lot of people shy away from.
Yes. Don't think about the initial investment, because we look at things like an investment. That one person, that one deal. And sometimes we can't even measure what came from that meetup until years later. It's 100%. That huge. So I am huge on networking and meetups, because it's so much that you can get out of it, besides on top of the education that's there.
Yeah, that's like a bonus, right?
Yeah.
Like, you go for the education, and it's like a bonus that you meet all these people that you end up doing business with. It's always a no-brainer to go to stuff like this.
Absolutely. So thank you for sharing that. Everybody is super hyped in the chat, Alexis. Everyone just is loving what you're sharing already. And let's start with, where are you from originally, and what made you migrate to Atlanta, Georgia to start growing your businesses?
Yeah, I was born in Washington, D.C., up where you are. That's where I called home for a really long time. Raised in Richmond, Virginia. And my senior year of high school, it was Corona. Like I mentioned, I'm on the younger side, so I was still a junior. I was a junior when they canceled school.
Wow.
And so at that time, my mom had always wanted to live in Florida, and as we all know, Florida was one of the states that wasn't following the rules. So I was like, all right, let's go. Like, let's do this. I'm down. And long story short, spent my senior year in Florida. I graduated high school, and I actually went to college. I went to Georgia Tech. That was my first exposure to Atlanta. I went to a university in the center of Atlanta, Midtown Atlanta, Georgia Tech. And that was the first time I actually was in Atlanta, looking around, like, being in the city. And then the story takes a left turn. I ended up dropping out of college. I should have said spoiler alert at the beginning. I ended up dropping out of college, and I moved back to Florida, got into real estate. Literally the day after I left college, I was at my first real estate event, meeting people, trying to figure out who in this room can help me accomplish what I want to accomplish. It's always going to be who, not how. It's a great book, Who, Not How. So I was always meeting people. Eventually, I made some money in real estate. I invested that money, again, into a mentorship, into education, into network. Mm-hmm. And I met my now business partner, Abraham Gray, who lives in Atlanta. And Abraham, my partner, has been in Atlanta for, 30 plus years at this point. He's built a brand there. And so me being in Orlando at that time for a year, 18 years old, I was willing to make the move for the relationship, for the business potential. And I was like, I already spent time in Atlanta. Wasn't too bad. I'm willing to take a chance and go back for this business relationship.
Wow, that's loaded, because you know how many times people often say, oh, not right now. It's not a good time. I can't transition my whole life. You did it. Yep. That is massive. And when you look back, it was totally worth it. More than worth it.
Right.
It's probably exceeded your expectations of what was going to happen there.
I could have never imagined this. Like, of course, we all write down our goals. Of course, we all have visions, but I mean, it's just incredible the speed at which something happens when you're around the right people. And if those people live 5 miles from you, 50 miles from you, or 500 miles from you, I promise you, it's worth the time to go spend with those people. It's worth the travel time to go and hang out around the right crowd.
The power of who we're speaking with every day, what we're talking about, those conversations are different, and it makes all the difference in what we do next. So that was huge. I'm glad you shared that. So I want to rewind back to what you said about you actually already knew when you were dropping out of school that you were already going to get into real estate and going to a meetup and jumping right in and taking action. So tell me a little bit about how you decided you were going to be an entrepreneur and where that thought originated.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was never, super entrepreneur like. I mean, in school, me and my brother sold candy, but we didn't have like this massive business that we ran. And so I always was a learner. I enjoyed learning. I enjoyed gaining more knowledge, bettering myself, but I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur. And so how did this come to be? How did I figure out real estate? None of my family's in real estate. I didn't know anyone in real estate growing up. So there wasn't anyone presenting the opportunity to me. What happened was I always loved to read books. Anytime I had free time, I'll be reading books. And when I was growing up, social media wasn't nearly as big as it is now. There wasn't any TikTok. It was just like you're either texting or you're doing something else. Like you're messaging your friends, you're on the phone, or you're doing something else. There wasn't like endless dopamine hits of scrolling.
I'm a book reader too.
Yeah, that was like my thing. And so one of the summers I was reading, I was traveling to my dad's house. My parents divorced when I was really small. I was traveling to my dad's house and I took this fictional book that I was reading. I finished the book like way earlier than I suspected. And I had 2 more weeks at his house. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do with myself. Like I need another book to read. And so my dad had this bookshelf of books. And one of those books, I was just like going through the bookshelf, which one should I read? And one of those books was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Boom.
And that book changed my life. That book, like, it restructured the way I thought about life. It made me realize that I can make this whatever I want to make this. And so that wasn't the click in real estate, but that was the click in personal development. And so I started researching. I started Googling what other books are like this. I want more. I want to absorb this content. And one of the sub items of that kind of genre was Rich Dad Poor Dad, which showed me real estate as the avenue, as the vehicle that could get me to that lifestyle that I was determined to get to.
And also the law of attraction got you there. That first book brought you to the next book. Another great book for you guys is The Secret. It just talks about how we can create everything we want within our mind. And then the law of attraction will do the rest. So like you said, who, not how, the how will always come. So wow, Alexis. And to hear that you didn't even have an original passion to be an entrepreneur to where you are now is why it's mind-blowing, guys. It's all within you to do. So tell us a little bit about the businesses that you own now, the massive success that you've created, and you can just start from where it started and go to where it is now.
I love it. So when I first began in real estate, similar to a lot of people who are getting started, I didn't know anything. And so the most valuable thing you can pursue is not a $5,000 check, $1,000 check. It's the knowledge. You need to know what you're doing so that you have the ability to duplicate it. If you did make 5,000 or 1,000, but you had no idea how you did it, what good is it, right? So I was determined to get the knowledge to build a business. And so how did I do that? I went to go and work for someone. So in the beginning of my real estate journey, I worked for a wholesaler who was buying and selling properties. And my job was to call the sellers and get them to sign a contract with us, get them to sell their house to us. And through that experience, I learned how to evaluate properties. I learned how to sell. I learned the skill of sales. I learned the skill of negotiation, going back and forth. What's a fair price? I learned so much, and I gained skills that I just legit didn't have before. And of course, you make money. If you're making money for someone else, they have no problem. Key tip here, golden nugget. If you help someone else make more money that they did not make before, they have no problem cutting you a piece of that capital. Yeah. Like I take the mindset of I can never be broke because I know how to create value for other people. Mm-hmm. And if I create value for other people that they didn't see before, I can always have a 50%, a 30%, a 70% of whatever value I'm creating. But I work for someone else. I got some commissions from that job. Eventually I split ways because I wanted to do my own thing. I was like, I'm determined to make this a business. I didn't drop out of college to get a job, right? That wasn't the goal. And I joined a sub 2. I joined a mentorship by Pace Warby, really. And I was able to meet and network with high-level entrepreneurs in real estate. And from that point, I had the skill of sales. I knew how to value property, but I didn't know how to find deals. And so I started asking around in sub 2, how can I find deals? How can I find deals? I don't want to spend any marketing money. Like I only have $13,000 Like, I don't want to spend this nest egg as an 18-year-old. I was very scared to spend money on my business. Now I just think of it as reinvesting. I'm happy to spend money on my business. But back then I was afraid. So what they had told me at that time was, if you don't want to spend money, you have time and you know how to sell, I would go door knock foreclosures. They're the most motivated leads. And that's what I got into.
Highest conversion. I bet you didn't see yourself wholesaling when you left school. That definitely wasn't.
I thought I was going to go buy and build a huge portfolio.
Yes, me too.
Yep.
Yes, that's awesome, Alexis. So from wholesaling to how did you get into buying businesses and lending?
Yeah. So this mentorship that I joined, best decision of my life, because I met my now business partner, Abraham Gray. When I met him, he was teaching masterminds on buying and selling businesses. Now he's bought and sold over 100 companies.
Wow.
He's worth over $100 million, largest exit. And so I was like, I want to learn from this guy. So I literally put everything real estate to the side to learn about buying businesses, to get involved in that world. And when I was studying this world, I noticed real estate has made the most millionaires by far. But private equity, mergers and acquisitions, buying businesses has made the most billionaires. And so I was like,
with a B.
Yes, with a B. And so this was a world I was super intrigued in. I was like, how does this work? How do these deals happen? Where do you find sellers? How do you value a business? Like, I didn't know any of that, right? And so Abraham was willing to walk me through all those things. Now, I ended up with this lending business back in the real estate aspect. But I've combined this aspect of business and this aspect of real estate and created this passive income business without ever having to own property, without ever having to manage tenants, manage trash, manage toilets. And
game changer.
Yes, that's the lifestyle that I always wanted. So Abraham taught me a ton about buying businesses. Ultimately, it wasn't something that I could take advantage of immediately. My knowledge base, my foundation was in real estate. So we came up with a way for me to make money in real estate lending, and I'm happy to tell that story.
Oh yes, we want it, Alexis. I'm just giving these guys the build up because our minds were blown when we came to see you and Abraham at the Dealmaker event to learn about buying business. I was like, wait a minute, you're making way more money buying and selling businesses creatively as well. That was a game changer, and also still helping people. Yeah. So how did you get to evolve to the lending piece? We do want to hear that story from learning that.
Yeah, I mean, buying and selling businesses is so interesting. You can like double the value of a business in less than 6 months, in a month if you want. Like, there's so many creative ways to value a business and get paid out on it. Ultimately, I decided to go the lending route because one day I was in the office with Abraham, and I was just, this is the value of hanging out with people that make a lot more than you, that are in different lifestyles than you, that you travel to go be around them. Because I was just inquiring. I was like, so tell me about, the investments that you do. Tell me about where the majority of your money comes from these days. And as long as you have someone who's willing to answer those questions, the answers to those questions for you as an individual who's trying to get on the come up, who's coming up, who needs the answers, it is life-changing. Access to that information is life-changing. And so I asked Abraham, and he mentioned that a good amount of his extra capital was deployed into what he calls private money loans. These are real estate loans to fix and flippers in the local market. I was like, okay, great. Tell me a little bit more about how that works. He's like, well, I typically will have at least $10 million deployed in this market out. I'll have it out on the street, lent out. And I'm typically charging minimum somewhere around 1.5% a month. And I was like, wait a minute, let me run these numbers. Let me run these numbers. You're telling me you have $10 million deployed and you're making 1.5% a month. So you're making $150,000 a month. Is that correct? He said, yes. He said, yes, minimum.
But that's his side hustle. That's his
side hustle. That's his side hustle. Exactly. So I was like, interesting. I don't understand. Why are you doing anything else? Why don't you do more loans? And he said something that was very important. He said, Alexis, no matter how much money you have, using your own money, you will run out.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, got it. Do your borrowers need more money? He said, yes, I turn down dozens of loans every month.
Wow.
Perfect. If I can raise money for this, can we deploy that capital at 1.5% monthly. It's like 100%. I'll take all the money I can get. And that's when it clicked for me. I had a network at this time since the beginning of my journey. I started on YouTube. I started messaging people. I started to build my brand equity. Who is Alexis Morgan? Anyone on here can go to my YouTube channel today and see me door knock, see me get doors slammed in my face, see me fail sales calls, see me go through the business buying aspect of my life. You all can see that. And so that trust that I built online allowed me to build a really strong network that when I reached out and said, hey, I'm doing lending with my partner, do you have idle cash that you would like to be earning on? A lot of people said yes. A lot of people
said my money, Alexis.
Said take my money. And that's when our business blew up. We started a fund, we started doing syndications, all these cool things. But that's how it kind of came to that point.
There's a couple of things that I have to dive into. First of all, when you are around someone that you aspire to do what they're doing, you better have your questions ready. Anytime I can pick the brain of a millionaire or a billionaire, you better believe I'm ready. They're like this, question. But also, you got to listen to what they're saying. And the second thing that you did, well, really the third, it was the questions, the listening intently. Then you found a way that you could bring him more value. Yes. And from that is how you got to earn while you learn, because you didn't know everything, but you had already built trust and credibility with people from being valuable to them, just showing them things that you failed and succeeded at on YouTube, and being kind and paying it forward with value, Alexis. So kudos to you and shout out to everything you did to get to where you are.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. One thing I want to highlight that you said that's really important is throughout the journey, whether or not I had something to offer someone, I was willing to build relationships. I was willing to say, how's this going? How's that going? I was willing to say, what are you interested in? How can I be of service? How can I bring deals to you? What deals are you interested in? All those things really matter. And when you've been giving, and you turn around and for the one time you do ask, people are more than willing to work with you. They want to help you. They want to give you more than what you ask for. So just that good karma, the generosity, it always comes back.
Here's another thing that I think people don't do once they do start making those connections and building relationships. Put them in the database. Keep track of who you're talking to. Keep track of what they're looking for, because you may get a call like, man, I'm looking for a house in Atlanta, Georgia. I needed to be 10%, to the person. And you're like, oh, I know exactly who I can get that from. And that is the power of actually leveraging the connections you make.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Just over the last 6 months, I started keeping a CRM, and I can't imagine like a relationship CRM. Who am I meeting? What are they interested in? Where are they from? What time zone are they? What's their email? And I literally cannot even fathom how many contacts I've lost. I wish I did that earlier.
Me too. So for the people just starting, we just gave you like a 10-step head start. Yeah. Start documenting right away. I don't care if you got one person, put them in your database. You can start with a spreadsheet. Literally. It's that simple, because literally your CRM is your lifeline, and that's the customer relationship management. So Alexis, for your lending business, who is your target client? What is your target clientele?
Yeah, I mean, we work with people who have made money, who are successful in whatever it is that they love to do. One of the investors that has invested with us, he goes out and buys apartment buildings, but his apartment buildings, they don't have cash flow for the first year, or it's a big payout at year 5. And so he wanted to put some money with us to get some cash flow in his life. Our deals start paying the first month after we loan the money. All of our deals have monthly cash flow. And so we really work well with people who have idle cash sitting around, $50,000, $50,000 to $500,000. I mean, some of our largest investors have millions of dollars with us. Wow. And what we provide is a peace of mind sort of investment. We're lending against real estate. And most importantly, we're lending less than what that real estate is worth in a market that we are an expert in. And so since we're the managers, since we're the operators, and we're doing all the underwriting, the investor gets a chance to enjoy monthly cash flow without the headache of going to acquire properties or the headache of chasing down borrowers. Abraham and I will back these deals, and we pay our investors every single month. So we work well with people who, like I mentioned, they love what they're doing. They don't necessarily want to create a whole real estate business, but they do want to be able to participate in some cash flow.
Yes. So that is awesome. I think that's important to note. So when you say that it's markets that you're familiar with, what if someone comes for a loan in Idaho, a market that you may or may not be in? Are you going to do some research on that market, or are you going to tell them, no, this is not a market that we typically lend in?
Yeah, I mean, there's two main reasons why we stay within 60 miles of Atlanta. Number
Okay.
one, when you are lending, you have to understand what that property is worth. If you have a property worth $100,000 and you loan $150,000 on it, if your borrower doesn't pay you back, you can guarantee a loss there. You can guarantee a loss. So you have to know, what is this property worth, and making sure that you're lending less than what it's worth, so that if your borrower passes out, falls off the face of the earth, dies, gets hit by a bus, you are going to make your profit. Yeah. Right. And it's hard to know every market of America. We'd rather stay in the market that we know, oh, on this street, it's worth a little bit less than on this street because this is the line where the school zone is. Like, you can't know those little small details about, more than a handful of markets at a time. The second reason is the foreclosure laws, the laws. I think people forget a lot of the times that laws change state to state, county to county, city to city. And so in the area that we loan in, if someone defaults on us, and trust me, if you do enough loans, someone will default on you, you can foreclose start to finish, start meaning filing the foreclosure, finish meaning auction, in 60 days max. That's the longest that it'll take.
That's really good.
In Idaho, it could be 12 months. It could be 6. One thing I know for sure is that very few states have 60 days. That timeline is gold. Yeah. And so there's not a long time where we're in the red losing money from a borrower who's decided, I can't pay this month. We can foreclose immediately, liquidate, and move on.
And I think that's also important for your lenders. They're like, you being hyper niche also protects them as lenders.
100%.
So sure, they respect that. And just looking in our market in the DMV, if you go to DC, one street to the next, it's totally different.
You have to know that.
If you don't live here, you would never know that. You're like, it's the nation's capital. No.
If you do not live in that market or invest in that market or understand that market, you could miss huge things like that and be lending on a property that you think is worth way more because the property across the corner has an ARV of whatever. But if you're in that market, once you turn on Main Street, the area is no bueno. You only know that if you're in a niche market.
Yes, that is wow. I mean, I had no idea that you were so niche down on where you're lending, but I think that's exactly why you all have so much success.
Yes.
So great tidbit there. So Alexis, I do want to ask, what is your big why? You've had so much success already, so I can't even imagine what the big dream, what the big goal is. And when you do achieve that big why, how will you know what to do next, and that it's done, or you want to keep going from there?
Yeah, I think something that's been important to me since I started is this whole kind of holistic mindset. You mentioned in the beginning, I'm huge value in health. I think health, wealth, relationships, mind, body, soul, those 3 trifectas are what's important to me. So yes, I love lending. Yes, I love helping people get a double-digit return on their money. Those things are great. But at the end of the day, the reason I'm doing this is to impact other leaders. I want leaders to lead better with more empathy, with more enthusiasm, with more authenticity, all those things. And it's hard to always, there's no exact formula. It's like being a Christian. You can't just go out and teach people to be a Christian. You have to lead by example. And so that's my why. That's why I'm on YouTube. That's why I do lives. That's why I go on podcasts like this. It's like, I want people to see that the people who are climbing the ladder to wealth and eventually end up on top can be very good, giving, lovely people. And it gives people permission to do the same. I know for me, Abraham Gray, my mentor and partner, Pace Morby, Vina Jetty, people like Layla Hormozy, all these people who I watch and look up to, them putting themselves out there kind of gives me permission to be who I want to be and be my authentic self. And so I hope to pass the torch in the same way and impact other leaders.
Wow. And you are doing it. It's already happening. But to hear that, real estate lending, business buying is a catalyst to the big goal of affecting so many other lives is huge. I love that. And was it a little bit scary for you getting started, putting yourself out there, being unapologetically you?
Oh yeah, it's definitely uncomfortable. Like, for example, right now I'm wearing a dress because I'm going to a meetup. But in the beginning, I didn't have, I still don't have this like fancy wardrobe. So I would go to the meetups with like the nicest clothes that I had in my closet, and it just wasn't always like, it wasn't always as easy as it is now. You have to get uncomfortable, you have to go out of your shell, and eventually the more and more you do those things, they become natural. You know, the first time that I spoke on stage, I was, you know, stuttering and nervous, and the first time that I was on the podcast, the same thing. But in order to grow, you have to be uncomfortable. And so definitely was uncomfortable, definitely was nerve-wracking. But that's the only way that you get ahead. You know, you have to move forward. You have to move through those things.
And I can second that. It was super, I was fearful to get started with this stuff, but looking back on the feedback and the people that we can impact, and not just now, for years to come, totally worth it. So anybody that's thinking about getting started, do it. Just do it. Fail forward, mess it up, but at least you're doing it. It'll get better as you have more reps in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One other thing there that I want to comment on is like having a personal brand online. I think if you have a business, it's always going to benefit you to have a personal brand. It adds lubrication to anything that you want to do. If you want to sell something, if you want to hire, if you want resources, people are attracted to people who lead. And so figure out, how can I become a leader? What aspects of myself do I need to work on to be able to be a good leader? How, are my communication skills good? Do people receive me well? How do people respond to me? How do I impact people? Am I smiling? Am I kind of short with my words? Am I speaking aggressively? You have to be able to, and it goes back to what I said at the beginning, you have to be able to put the microscope on yourself and say, okay, how can I improve so that the world responds to me better? Having a personal brand online is like that 10x. You get huge ripple effects. I'm sure you've experienced it, Jael, but so many opportunities have come to me because of what I built on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all those things.
Yes. And I can't stress enough how many times we say and other people say, I'd rather do business with somebody I like. And what is the easiest way for somebody to find out if they like you? They're going to spend some time with you. And not all the time can we do this in person. But if you have an online presence, they're spending time with you while you may be asleep, just like making money in your sleep. And this is another form of making money while you may not be physically there. So it's super important. And a lot of people are like, I feel like I know you already.
Yes, that's always what they say. And it's true. It's true. I mean, you're authentic online. They kind of do know who you are.
A little piece of us, honestly. So, yeah, I love that, Alexis. So I want to dive into your favorite success story. If you can narrow it down to one, you can give us a couple if you want to, and it can be across any part of your businesses.
I love it. So I'm gonna say, I think I learn a lot from failing. Actually, my success stories are great. I think probably the biggest success that I've had is raising the money that I have and being creative around coming up with business ideas, helping people. But one failure that I want to go into specifically, that failures always will provide insight, right? Failures will provide insight into what you need to work on, what you don't know. Before I go into the success stories, I want to go into one, like, this is something that's imprinted on my heart as a failure.
First, let's go for it.
So when I first joined Sub2 is all about creative financing and structuring deals that you don't always have to bring money to the table. The best person that you can buy a Sub2 from is someone who's willing to finance a note for you, finance a mortgage for you over a long period of time. On the flip side of that, there's people in real estate called fix and flippers. These people go in and out of properties within 6 months or so. These are actually people that I lend money to now. But in the beginning, I just was going to meetups and meeting fix and flippers. I was meeting all kinds of people. And I learned about creative finance, and I was like, all right, great. Like, I know how to buy houses with no money. Like, I'm going to go and pitch this strategy. And I went to a real estate meetup, shaking hands like normal. And I meet this fix and flipper, and he tells me all about this house that's just beautiful. He's rehabbed it, you know, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, all the things. And I was like, ooh, this is a deal I want. Like, I want this deal. And this guy is about to list this property on the market. And I go, well, you know, like, you don't have to list it on the market. You can sell that property to me, you know, finance it over 30 years. I'll pay you a certain payment every single month. And, you know, we can just have a deal like that. And the guy literally looked me dead in the eye and he said, I don't see how that makes sense for me. And he walked away. That's it. That's it. And in that moment, I was so embarrassed because like that's in person, you know, like someone looked me in my eyes and just was like, what you said makes no sense. I'm out. Like
Right.
that was so embarrassing.
No
But
explanation, nothing. Just rolled
nothing. Just rolled out, you know? And in that moment, I was a little sad at first. I can't lie. That's normal. But I was like, okay, I did something wrong. Like, why isn't this guy willing to sell or finance me his property? And I was able to go back. And when I was in the beginning of my career, I would go to these meetups and I would sit in the car for like an hour and a half afterwards, analyzing all the conversations that I had.
Absolutely.
Like, how are people responding to me? How did I do? Like, did something good come out of this? Because that's how you get better. You have to reflect. And I was just like, okay, what did I do wrong? Why isn't it a good fit for him? Was it me? Was it him? Was it both of us? Like just figuring out, having the reflection time of how can I get deals? That was the point of it. How can I get deals? But really, like, how can I improve my skills in this area of pitching, of creative finance? Did I say something that wasn't accurate? Come to find out, fix and flippers just want to keep turning properties, right? They're not in the business of financing the properties. But I learned that because I failed. If I would have never pitched it, I probably would have just been the person that I talked about in the beginning, the learner who wants to spill to you all the knowledge that they've consumed, but they've never done the thing.
Yeah.
After that, I went on to sell a couple dozen seller finance and sub 2 deals, and I wholesaled them. But you had to learn. You know, you have to learn, and so you can only have the opportunity to fail or succeed by putting yourself out there. If you do it, yes, you have to take action and do it. So that was a failure that impacted me a lot. You know, I learned a lot.
Alexis, when we learn creative finance, we pitch it to everybody, but then we realize it's just a tool in our tool belt for people who have a distress, and we can give them a different solution. Yes. But at first, and then think about all the people that make those calls to agents and are like, yeah, I can offer you. And they're like, what are you talking about? Goodbye. Yep. But in person, that's a little rough. So, but it taught you a lot.
Yeah, in person, I was like, damn, that was harsh. Cool. Yeah, me and the guy are actually cool now. He's a cool guy. He's a good fix and flipper.
He wanted that profit out of that fix and flip. He's like, I'm gonna wait 30 years for 40 or 50K.
Yep, and that was my fault for not understanding. You know, and
if you would have you probably would have had a better understanding. Okay, I need to pitch this to somebody else in a different situation.
Yes, 100%. My biggest success, now we can turn the page to my biggest success. I think my biggest success, you know, ironically, isn't tied to a dollar amount. It isn't tied to a certain decision. I think it's tied to a principle and a characteristic of my personality, which is constantly being ready for any opportunity. I am all game. You know, I mentioned that my partner now is in Atlanta. I was in Orlando when I met him. And the first time that we met, I drove the 6 hours for a 2-hour meetup for the opportunity to meet people who were doing better than me, to meet people who were more advanced, to meet people who could potentially take me on as a mentee. So I think by far that is my biggest success, that characteristic, that grit, that willingness. And I think that might be a little ironic or maybe not what people wanted to hear. You know, the money that I've raised is great. The money that I make now is phenomenal. I would have never thought I'd be making what I'm making now as a 20-year-old. But I think the principles almost always matter so much more than the externals.
I think actually what you did, you look back at, if you never did that, would everything else have happened after that?
Yeah.
So really, that was a defining moment in everything that you've achieved. So we like to talk about that big win that happened way down the line, but really the true success was when you made the decision to drive 6 hours that changed your life forever.
Yeah.
That is
awesome. Know what I'm putting down. Exactly.
Yes, I got it. I just want to make sure that they got it. You guys, it's the little things, that decision that to do it or not to do it, and you should just do it because you didn't know what was going to happen after that.
No clue. I could have drove the 6 hours and the meetup was mid, or it was a waste of time. That almost happens never, by the way.
Right.
But it's worth it to take that risk because you never know the upside. There's very little downside, very little. Maybe the worst case scenario, you lose 2 hours. And I'm sure all of you listening have wasted 2 hours watching Netflix before.
Scrolling all the time.
All of us. Yes. The worst case scenario is you lose 2 hours. The best case scenario, you can't even imagine. You don't even know what God has in store. Like, so just go. Just do it.
Yes, just do it. I love that. I love that. So I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give someone that is just getting started, brand new, or even just thinking about getting started?
Yeah. Getting started in real estate, correct?
In anything, maybe any business as an entrepreneur, what would you tell them that they need to do first?
Love it. The first thing that you need to do is make sure you prepare your mind for all the trials and tribulations you will go through.
Yes.
I think being an entrepreneur is the most reflective single activity that you have to participate in. When the business succeeds, thanks to you. When the business fails, thanks to you. When the business is rocky, thanks to you. When the business is consistent, thanks to you. You have to constantly be able and willing to look yourself in the mirror as an entrepreneur. So I think you have to set that expectation with yourself. The second thing immediately after that is go find someone who you can spend time with, who you can sit beside, who you can shadow, whether you have to pay for a mentorship, whether you have someone at a meetup, whether you're going to someone's office. Show up consistently. One thing that I did not mention here yet that is very important is for the first 3 months of me working with Abraham Gray, I showed up to the office from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. making no money, but watching, learning, understanding what is going on in this man's world. What is going on? How can I add value here? Literally 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single day, Monday through Friday. And what I've seen now, being his business partner, working in that office, making millions of dollars every year with him, is that people will show up once. They'll come back 6 months later and nothing's changed. They'll come back 3 months later and nothing changed. But if they would just show up consistently to the person who's willing to teach them, to the person who has done better than them, and be around, continuously show up, they would have had whatever success they were dreaming of. But most people are not willing to show up, and especially show up consistently.
Yes. And then the expectation of, I need results right now.
Yes.
That is not how it works. To do the hard things first, to live the lives we want to live later, that's what it takes. Like I cold called for 90 days straight before I got anything. But I didn't even skip Saturdays and Sundays for hours. I was dedicated because it takes consistency. And also it just takes you going above and beyond and not expecting anything. But when you do get something, you're like, oh, it's so worth it. It makes the win so much better. So I'm glad you shared that with the viewers, because everybody thinks it's an instant success.
It's not.
You're a genius, you're brilliant, but they're like, oh, Alexis had success right away. She was born into a family of real estate, and you just eliminated all of those beliefs and told them that started from nothing, put the grit and the time in, and now look at what I've done in just a couple of years.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. So how can we help you reach your big dream of helping more leaders, your holistic approach? What can we do as viewers and the people who are going to see this later on do for you to help you achieve those big goals?
Well, one of the things I've spilled a lot about myself here on this podcast. One of the things that you guys can do immediately is hit the freaking like button.
Yes.
We'll reach more people. Jael and I both have this goal: reach more people, impact more people, like this podcast. Subscribe. I've seen the other guests that Jael has on. They are incredible. So that's one thing for sure. On top of that, you can go and support me on social media. I think social media is the way that we can all connect, that we can all integrate. And that's the main way that I've seen myself. I've watched myself. I've strategically created my brand to impact a lot of people. So going and supporting my YouTube, going and supporting me on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, all those things. And I'm 20 years old now. Who knows what we'll be doing and accomplishing at 40 or 60. So I'm excited to have met all of you guys at this point in the journey, and excited to kind of build the story together.
Alexis, I can't wait to see what you do, because it's just amazing what you've already done. And like she said, guys, like, share, subscribe. Somebody needs to hear this. Yes. Somebody needs to connect with Alexis and change their lives and get the money they need to fund deals, and also lend money with her. Make sure you do all of those things. I'm so grateful for you being here today, Alexis.
Thank you.
Send me all of your social links and everything. Yes. We're going to plug it in the description. And you guys, make sure you follow her everywhere and stay engaged.
Love it.
Thanks so much. Enjoy Clever Summit. Make lots of great connections.
Will do. Thanks, Shale.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye.